I was staring at the sealed envelope marked Urgent, IRS Audit Notice, when my phone rang. CFO Marcus Hartwell's voice crackled through the speakerphone with that smugness I'd grown to despise. "Billy, pack your trash. We're outsourcing accounting." The irony hit me like a freight train as I read the audit date Monday morning. $280 million in potential penalties, and they just fired the only person who knew it was coming. I slowly placed the envelope back in my locked desk drawer and smiled. 8 years. That's how long I dedicated my life to Davidson Industries, watching it grow from Harold Davidson's family-owned manufacturing dream into a mid-sized powerhouse in Columbus, Ohio. I started as a junior accountant fresh out of Ohio State, 24 years old, and eager to prove myself in the corporate world. Now, at 32, I held the title of Senior Financial Compliance Manager, a position I'd earned through countless late nights and weekend work sessions. My cubicle had evolved into a corner office over those years, but I still arrived at 7:30 every morning, an hour before anyone else. The fluorescent lights would flicker to life as I made my way through the empty corridors, my heels clicking against the polished concrete floors. The scent of industrial cleaning solutions mixed with the faint smell of machinery from the production floor below created an atmosphere that somehow felt like home. Harold Davidson had been more than a boss during those early years. The 70-year-old founder treated his employees like family, remembering birthdays and asking about sick relatives. His office door stayed open, and he genuinely cared about our personal struggles. When my mother Patricia was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, Harold personally adjusted my schedule so I could drive her to medical appointments. "Family comes first, Billy," he'd say with that warm smile that made everyone feel valued. But Harold retired 2 years ago, selling his controlling interest to a private equity firm called Summit Capital Partners. They immediately installed new leadership CEO Jennifer Walsh and CFO Marcus Hartwell, both graduates of some expensive consulting firm in Chicago. The company culture shifted overnight from family-oriented to profit-obsessed. Jennifer Walsh was a sharp-featured woman in her 40s who wore tailored suits that probably cost more than I made in a month. She spoke in corporate buzzwords and treated employees like expendable resources. Marcus Hartwell was worse, a 38-year-old finance expert who seemed to enjoy making people uncomfortable. His corner office overlooked the parking lot, and I'd often catch him watching employees through those floor-to-ceiling windows like a predator studying prey. Under their leadership, Davidson Industries became unrecognizable. The break room coffee was replaced with a cheaper brand. The annual Christmas party was canceled to optimize holiday expenses. Employee benefits were quietly reduced while executive bonuses mysteriously increased. But I stayed loyal partly because I needed the $75,000 salary to support myself and help with Mom's mounting medical bills. My small house on Maple Street wasn't much, a 1950s ranch with 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom, but it was mine. The mortgage payments were manageable, and I'd slowly renovated the kitchen and living room over the years. Mom lived 15 minutes away in a senior community, and I visited every evening after work, helping with her medications and keeping her company. I took pride in my meticulous work. Federal compliance requirements were my specialty, and I'd developed systems that kept Davidson Industries spotless during previous IRS reviews. My filing cabinets contained 8 years of perfectly organized financial records. Every transaction was documented, every tax form was accurate, and every regulatory deadline was met weeks in advance. But recently, I'd noticed troubling changes. Marcus had started making accounting decisions without consulting me. Expenses were being categorized in ways that seemed questionable. When I raised concerns about certain transactions, he'd dismiss my questions with condescending explanations about modern financial strategies. Jennifer would nod along, treating my 8 years of institutional knowledge as outdated thinking. The morning everything changed started like any other Tuesday. I arrived early, unlocked my office, and began sorting through the previous day's mail. Financial documents, vendor invoices, regulatory correspondence. The usual stack that required my attention. But buried beneath routine paperwork, I discovered an envelope that made my blood run cold. The return address read, Internal Revenue Service Criminal Investigation Division. My hands trembled as I carefully opened the seal and read the contents. A comprehensive audit was scheduled for the following Monday, targeting the past 3 years of financial records. The letter mentioned anonymous whistleblower claims of tax evasion and fraudulent reporting. The potential penalties could reach $280 million. I read the letter 3 times, making sure I understood every word. Someone had reported Davidson Industries for financial misconduct, and the IRS was taking it seriously enough to launch a full criminal investigation. As Senior Financial Compliance Manager, I was listed as the primary contact for document preparation and audit coordination. This was the moment that would change everything. I had a choice: warn the people who'd been systematically undermining me, or let them face the consequences of their decisions. The audit notice required 48 hours advance notice to company leadership, but that deadline had technically passed when the letter arrived a day late due to postal delays. I placed the letter back in its envelope and locked it in my desk drawer. Whatever happened next, they'd made their bed through months of disrespecting my expertise and treating me as expendable. Marcus and Jennifer were about to learn why experienced compliance managers earn their salaries. The call came at 2:15 that afternoon. Marcus's assistant, a nervous young woman named Tracy, asked me to report to his office immediately. I gathered my notepad and pen, assuming he wanted to discuss the quarterly reports I'd submitted that morning. Nothing could have prepared me for what awaited. Marcus sat behind his mahogany desk like a king on his throne, his expensive suit perfectly pressed and his silver hair slicked back with precision. Jennifer Walsh appeared on the large monitor mounted on the wall, her face stern and businesslike from her New York office. The contrast to Harold Davidson's warm, welcoming leadership style couldn't have been more stark.
"Sit down, Billy,"
Marcus said without looking up from his tablet. The leather chair across from his desk felt cold and uncomfortable, nothing like the cozy atmosphere Harold used to maintain. Sunlight streamed through those floor-to-ceiling windows, but somehow the room felt darker than usual. Jennifer's voice came through the speakers with crystal clarity. "We've completed our efficiency analysis of the accounting department," she announced as if discussing the weather. "Your position has been identified as redundant in our new operational structure." The words hit me like a physical blow. 8 years of dedication, countless hours of overtime, and unwavering loyalty meant nothing to these people. Marcus finally looked up, his expression showing not even a hint of remorse or gratitude for my service.
"We've contracted with Efficiency Solutions,"
he continued, consulting his tablet. "They're a highly rated offshore accounting firm based in Mumbai. They can handle all our financial operations at a fraction of current costs." I sat there in stunned silence, trying to process what was happening. They were replacing me with workers halfway around the world who'd never set foot in Davidson Industries, never understood our unique business model, never built relationships with our vendors and clients. "What about institutional knowledge?" I finally managed to ask. "The compliance requirements, the vendor relationships, the historical context of our financial decisions." Marcus waved his hand dismissively. "Everything will be documented and transferred. These offshore professionals are highly trained and extremely efficient." His tone suggested my concerns were naive and outdated. Jennifer's face remained impassive on the monitor. "The cost savings are substantial, Billy. Your salary of $75,000 annually will be replaced by a team of 3 accountants costing roughly $20,000 total. It's simple mathematics. Simple mathematics. 8 years of building this company's financial integrity reduced to a cost-benefit calculation. I thought about all the times I'd caught errors that could have cost the company millions, all the late nights ensuring compliance deadlines were met, all the personal sacrifices I'd made for Davidson Industries. Your termination is effective immediately. Marcus continued, his voice taking on that familiar condescending tone. We'll provide 2 weeks of severance pay as a gesture of goodwill. Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings. 2 weeks. After 8 years of perfect service, they valued my contribution at exactly 14 days of salary. The insult was almost breathtaking in its cruelty. I'll need you to provide all passwords and access codes before you leave, Marcus added, finally showing some concern about practical matters. The Mumbai team will need complete system access to ensure a smooth transition. This was my moment of power, though they didn't realize it yet. I had spent 8 years building sophisticated security protocols and encryption systems that protected Davidson Industries' financial data. Every critical file was password protected with codes only I knew. The offshore accounting team would find themselves locked out of essential systems. Of course, I said calmly, standing from the uncomfortable leather chair. I'll make sure everything is properly documented for the transition. Marcus smiled, probably thinking I was being cooperative and professional. Jennifer nodded approvingly from the monitor. Neither of them suspected that I had no intention of providing anything beyond basic courtesy. Security guard Frank Rodriguez arrived at my office 10 minutes later, his expression apologetic and embarrassed. Frank had worked at Davidson Industries for 15 years and remembered when Harold Davidson treated employees with dignity. I'm sorry about this, Billy, he whispered as we walked through the office. This ain't right. My colleagues avoided eye contact as I packed my personal belongings. Some seemed genuinely shocked by my sudden termination, while others appeared relieved that the axe hadn't fallen on them yet. Amanda Chen, my closest friend in the accounting department, watched from her cubicle with tears in her eyes, but said nothing. I deliberately took only items that belonged to me, family photos, a small plant, my favorite coffee mug, and personal stationery. Everything related to Davidson Industries stayed exactly where it was, including the sealed IRS audit notice in my locked desk drawer. Let them figure out their own problems. As Frank escorted me toward the exit, Marcus appeared in the lobby with that smug expression I'd grown to despise. I trust there won't be any hard feelings, Billy, he said loud enough for other employees to hear. This is just business. Nothing personal. Nothing personal. The phrase echoed in my mind as I walked through the parking lot toward my car. 8 years of my life, and it was just business to them. I sat in my Honda Civic for several minutes watching the building where I'd invested so much of my heart and soul. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from my mother. How was your day, sweetheart? Looking forward to dinner tonight. I realized I'd have to tell her about losing my job, about the uncertain future we now faced. Mom's medical expenses were substantial, even with insurance, and my unemployment would add financial stress to her health concerns. As I drove home through Columbus traffic, my phone rang. The caller ID showed an unknown number with a Washington, D.C. area code. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Ms. Richardson, this is Agent Sarah Mitchell with the Internal Revenue Service Criminal Investigation Division. The professional female voice said. I'm calling to confirm our audit appointment scheduled for Monday morning at Davidson Industries. We'll need you to have all financial records from the past 3 years prepared for immediate review. My heart raced as I realized the implications. The IRS agents would arrive Monday morning expecting to find organized, accessible financial records prepared by someone who understood the company's complex accounting systems. Instead, they'd find chaos and confusion. "Agent Mitchell," I said carefully, "I'm no longer employed by Davidson Industries as of this afternoon. You'll need to coordinate directly with the company's current management." There was a pause on the other end of the line.
"I see. That's unusual timing.
"Do you have contact information for the current person responsible for financial records?" I gave her Marcus Hartwell's direct number and Jennifer Walsh's contact information. "They'll be able to assist you with whatever you need," I said, though I knew perfectly well they'd be unable to access anything meaningful without my passwords and institutional knowledge. Agent Mitchell thanked me and hung up. I continued driving home wondering how Marcus and Jennifer would react when federal agents arrived demanding records they couldn't access. The audit notice was still locked in my desk drawer, and they had no idea what was coming. For the first time since sitting in Marcus's office that afternoon, I smiled. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp October weather that made Columbus beautiful. I sat in my kitchen drinking coffee and reading the local newspaper when my phone started buzzing with missed calls. The caller ID showed Davidson Industries' main number, but I let it go to voicemail. Whatever crisis was unfolding, there was no longer my responsibility. At exactly 9 o'clock, my landline rang. The caller ID displayed a government number I recognized from the previous week's conversation. "Ms. Richardson, this is Agent Sarah Mitchell. I'm currently at Davidson Industries with my team, and we're encountering some difficulties accessing the financial records we requested. The current management seems unprepared for our arrival." I pictured the chaos unfolding in Marcus's corner office.
"I'm sorry to hear that, Agent Mitchell. As I mentioned, I'm no longer employed by the company. Is there something specific I can help clarify?"
"Well, the CFO, Mr. Hartwell, claims that all critical financial data is locked in systems that only you can access. He's suggesting that your termination was timed to sabotage our investigation. He's demanding that we pursue criminal charges against you for obstruction of justice." The audacity was breathtaking. Marcus was trying to make me the scapegoat for his own failures.
"Agent Mitchell,
I was terminated on Tuesday afternoon with immediate effect. I provided standard courtesy during my departure, but was never asked to prepare for any audit. In fact, no one mentioned an audit to me at all."
"That's interesting,"
Agent Mitchell said, her tone sharpening. "Mr. Hartwell claims the company received no advance notice of our investigation." This was where Marcus's arrogance would destroy him. "Agent Mitchell, IRS audit notices are typically sent to the Senior Financial Compliance Manager, which was my role. I received that correspondence last Tuesday morning before my termination. The notice remained in my office when I left." There was a long pause. "Are you saying the audit notice was delivered to your attention and the company's leadership was unaware of it?" "I'm saying the notice was properly delivered to the appropriate person according to IRS protocol. What company leadership chose to do with that information after my termination is outside my knowledge or control." Agent Mitchell thanked me and hung up. I could imagine the conversation she was about to have with Marcus about notification procedures and record-keeping responsibilities. Around 11:30, my phone rang again. This time it was Harold Davidson calling from his retirement home in Clearwater Beach, Florida. His voice sounded older and more fragile than I remembered. "Billy, honey, what in the world is happening up there? Marcus called me in a panic saying there's some kind of federal investigation and you've locked them out of the computer systems." Hearing Harold's voice brought back memories of better times at Davidson Industries.
"Mr. Davidson, they terminated me last Tuesday with no warning and 2 weeks severance.
I wasn't asked to prepare for any audit or transition responsibilities. I simply collected my personal belongings and left. Terminated Marcus told me you'd accepted a mutual separation package. He said you wanted to pursue other opportunities." The lies kept getting deeper.
"Mr. Davidson,
I was called into Marcus's office and told my position was redundant because they'd outsourced accounting to a firm in Mumbai. I was escorted out by security that same afternoon." Harold was quiet for several moments.
Billy, I'm driving back to Ohio tonight. This doesn't sound right at all. You've been nothing but loyal to this company for 8 years. There's got to be some misunderstanding.
After hanging up with Harold, I decided to drive past Davidson Industries to see the situation for myself. 3 government vehicles were parked in the visitor spaces, and I could see people in business suits moving purposefully through the lobby. Marcus's BMW was still in his reserved parking spot, but I noticed several other employee cars were missing from their usual spaces. My phone buzzed with the text from Amanda. 23 people got laid off this morning. They're saying it's temporary due to the investigation, but nobody believes it. Marcus is freaking out and blaming everything on you. It's insane here. 23 people. Nearly half the office staff had lost their jobs because Marcus and Jennifer couldn't handle a basic audit request. These were good people with families, mortgages, and responsibilities now suffering because of leadership incompetence. Another text came from Frank Rodriguez, the security guard. Miss Billy, they got me working double shifts because half the staff is gone. Mr. Hartwell is yelling at everyone saying you sabotaged the computers. But between you and me, I think they're just scared and looking for someone to blame. I drove home feeling conflicted. Part of me felt vindicated that Marcus was finally facing consequences for his arrogance and poor treatment of employees. But another part of me felt guilty about the innocent people suffering because of decisions they didn't make. My mother called around 2 o'clock, her voice concerned. Sweetheart, Mrs. Patterson from next door said she saw some news trucks at that industrial park where your office is located. Is everything okay? Mom didn't know about my termination yet. I'd been putting off that difficult conversation while figuring out my next steps. There's some kind of investigation at my former company, Mom. I'll explain everything when I come for dinner tonight. The local news was indeed covering the story. Channel 10 ran a brief segment about a federal investigation at a Columbus manufacturing company. But they didn't mention specifics or names. I wondered how long it would take before the media discovered the human interest angle of the fired employee who held the keys to critical evidence. Around 4 o'clock, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. The voice on the other end was professional but friendly. Ms. Richardson, this is Agent Robert Torres with the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. I'm working with Agent Mitchell on the Davidson Industries case. We'd like to schedule a time to speak with you as a witness, not as a subject of investigation. A witness? Yes, ma'am. Based on our conversations with company leadership and our preliminary review of available records, it appears you may have information relevant to our investigation. We're particularly interested in any observations about financial practices or accounting irregularities during your employment. This was a significant development. Instead of being treated as a suspect, the IRS was recognizing me as a knowledgeable witness who might help their investigation. Marcus's attempt to portray me as a saboteur was backfiring spectacularly. I'd be happy to cooperate with your investigation, Agent Torres. When would be convenient? Would tomorrow afternoon work for you? We can meet at our field office downtown, or if you prefer, we can come to your home for privacy. I chose the field office, preferring to keep my mother away from government investigations until I understood the full scope of what was happening. Agent Torres gave me the address and scheduled our meeting for 2 o'clock Tuesday afternoon. As I hung up the phone, I realized my situation had fundamentally changed. I was no longer just an unemployed accountant seeking new employment. I was potentially a key witness in a federal investigation that could determine whether Davidson Industries survived or collapsed under the weight of its own corruption. The irony was perfect. Marcus and Jennifer had fired me to cut costs and improve efficiency. Instead, they'd created a crisis that threatened the entire company's existence. Their arrogance and disrespect for institutional knowledge was about to cost them everything they'd tried to protect. The news broke on Wednesday morning. I was having coffee and scanning job postings online when my phone started ringing nonstop. Channel 6 News had run a story with the headline, Former employee holds company hostage during federal investigation. The report painted me as a disgruntled worker who had deliberately sabotaged Davidson Industries' computer systems in revenge for being fired. The story quoted Marcus extensively. He called me unstable and vindictive, claiming I had stolen proprietary company information and corrupted financial databases to obstruct federal investigators. Jennifer Walsh appeared via video link from New York describing my termination as necessary due to performance issues and concerning behavioral patterns. My phone buzzed with a text from my college roommate in Toledo. "Just saw the news story about your company. Are you okay?" "This sounds crazy." More messages followed from former classmates, neighbors, and acquaintances who'd seen the coverage. The story was spreading beyond Columbus, damaging my professional reputation across Ohio's accounting community. I realized that even if I found a new job, potential employers would discover these allegations during background checks. The manipulation was brilliant in its cruelty. Marcus and Jennifer were destroying my career to save their own reputations. They'd turned a federal investigation into a personal vendetta against a former employee, knowing I couldn't publicly defend myself without appearing defensive and guilty. Around noon, Harold Davidson arrived at my front door. The 72-year-old looked exhausted from his overnight drive from Florida. His usually neat appearance was disheveled, and his eyes showed confusion and distress.
"Billy, I've been talking to Marcus and the attorneys all morning,"
he said as I invited him into my living room.
"There are things that don't add up about this whole situation. I need to hear your side of the story."
I made coffee and explained everything that had happened since the previous Tuesday. Harold listened without interruption, his expression growing darker as I described the audit notice and my termination. When I finished, he sat quietly for several minutes.
"This is not the company I built,"
he finally said.
"When I sold to Summit Capital, they promised to maintain our values and treat employees fairly.
Marcus and Jennifer have been telling me that everything was running smoothly. Mr. Davidson, with respect, things have changed dramatically since your retirement. The culture you created is gone. Employees are treated as disposable resources, and anyone who questions their methods gets eliminated." Harold rubbed his temples, looking older than his years.
"Billy, I need to ask you something, and I want a completely honest answer.
Did you deliberately withhold information about the audit to hurt the company?" The question stung because it came from someone whose opinion I valued.
"Mr. Davidson, I received the audit notice on the morning of my termination.
I had maybe 4 hours between reading the letter and being escorted out by security. Even if I'd wanted to share the information, Marcus and Jennifer made it clear they didn't value my input or judgment." He nodded slowly.
"The audit notice should have been shared with leadership regardless of timing. You're absolutely right. But I was told to pack my trash and get out. My 8 years of service were reduced to a cost-cutting decision. At that moment, I felt no obligation to protect people who just discarded me like garbage."
Harold was quiet again, processing my words. Then he said something that surprised me. "Marcus is offering to triple your severance package if you'll come back temporarily to help resolve the audit. He's also prepared to provide a positive reference letter and make a public statement correcting the narrative about your departure. Triple severance would be 6 weeks of salary, roughly $9,000. Combined with unemployment benefits, it would cover my expenses for several months while I searched for new employment. The positive reference and public correction would repair much of the professional damage from the news coverage." "What exactly would they expect in return?" I asked. "Full cooperation with the audit process. You'd provide all passwords and access codes, explain the filing systems, and help the IRS agents understand the financial records. Essentially, you'd ensure a smooth audit that doesn't damage the company's reputation or operations." The offer was tempting, especially given my mounting financial pressures. Mom's medical bills were substantial, and losing my health insurance would make her situation even more expensive. But accepting would mean helping the same people who'd humiliated me and were now destroying my reputation to save themselves. Mr. Davidson, I appreciate the offer, but I need to think about it. This isn't just about money anymore. They've accused me of criminal behavior on local television. They've damaged my professional reputation to deflect attention from their own failures. I understand your anger, Billy, but consider the bigger picture. 23 innocent people have lost their jobs because of this crisis. If Davidson Industries fails, hundreds more employees will be affected. Your knowledge could save the company and protect all those families. The emotional manipulation was subtle but effective. Harold was appealing to my sense of responsibility for other employees while downplaying Marcus and Jennifer's role in creating the crisis. It was the same loyalty trap that had kept me working unpaid overtime for years. My phone rang, interrupting our conversation. The caller ID showed Amanda's number. "Billy, I have to tell you something," Amanda whispered clearly, trying not to be overheard. "I've been going through some old financial records for the audit, and I found something disturbing. There are wire transfers to offshore accounts that don't match any vendor relationships I know about. The amounts are substantial, and they're all authorized by Marcus and Jennifer personally." My blood ran cold. "How substantial are we talking about?" "Over $2 million in the past 18 months. The transfers go to banks in the Cayman Islands and Switzerland. I can't find any corresponding services or products that would justify these payments." This was exactly what I'd suspected but could never prove. Marcus and Jennifer weren't just incompetent managers. They were actively stealing from Davidson Industries. The IRS audit wasn't just about tax compliance. It was about to uncover systematic embezzlement. "Amanda, have you shared this information with the auditors?" "Not yet. I wanted to talk to you first because I don't know who to trust anymore. Marcus is saying you corrupted the records, but these transfers happened after you left. Either someone else has been making unauthorized changes, or Marcus and Jennifer have been embezzling company funds and using my termination to cover their tracks." Harold was watching my face during the phone conversation, clearly sensing that something significant was developing. When I hung up, I explained what Amanda had discovered. His reaction was immediate and visceral. $2 million. That's impossible. I review the quarterly financial statements and there's no mention of any offshore transactions. "Mr. Davidson, when was the last time you personally reviewed detailed financial records rather than summary reports prepared by Marcus?" The question hit home. Harold realized he'd been trusting summary reports from people who might be stealing from him. His face showed a mixture of betrayal and determination. "Billy, I'm withdrawing the offer to bring you back temporarily. If what you're suggesting is true, then Marcus and Jennifer need to face full consequences for their actions. I won't be part of any cover-up." As Harold prepared to leave, my phone rang again. This time it was Agent Mitchell. "Ms. Richardson, we've discovered some irregularities in Davidson Industries' financial records that we'd like to discuss with you. Could you come in tomorrow morning instead of this afternoon? We have some additional questions about certain transactions that occurred during your employment." The investigation was expanding beyond tax compliance into potential criminal fraud. I was no longer just a witness to poor management. I was potentially the key to exposing systematic theft from a company I'd served loyally for 8 years. "Agent Mitchell, I'll be there tomorrow morning. And I think you should know that I've just received information about offshore wire transfers that might be relevant to your investigation." "We'll definitely want to hear about that. Thank you for your cooperation, Ms. Richardson." As I watched Harold drive away, I realized the situation had fundamentally changed again. This wasn't about wounded pride or professional vindication anymore. It was about justice for theft and fraud that could have destroyed Davidson Industries even without federal intervention. Marcus and Jennifer had made a critical error in their desperation. By publicly attacking my character and competence, they'd motivated me to actively assist the investigation rather than simply staying silent. Their manipulation attempt had backfired completely, turning a passive witness into an active ally of law enforcement. Thursday evening brought an unexpected and aggressive escalation. I was helping my mother with her dinner when the doorbell rang at 7:30. Through the peephole, I saw Marcus Hartwell and Jennifer Walsh standing on my front porch, accompanied by two men I didn't recognize. I opened the door with the chain latch still engaged. "What are you doing here?" Marcus stepped closer to the door, his usual corporate polish replaced by desperate aggression.
"We need to talk, Billy. This situation has gotten out of hand and we need to resolve it tonight."
"There's nothing to resolve. I'm cooperating with federal investigators as required by law. Anything else should go through attorneys." Jennifer moved into view, her expensive suit wrinkled, and her carefully styled hair showing signs of stress.
"We know you've been feeding information to the IRS agents to make us look bad. This is your chance to fix the damage you've caused."
The audacity was stunning. They'd driven to my house to intimidate me into silence about their own criminal behavior. I noticed one of the unknown men was taking photos of my front door and license plate with his phone. "Who are these people with you?" I demanded. The older of the two men stepped forward.
"Jacob Sterling, licensed private investigator. I'm documenting this conversation for legal purposes."
He was probably 60 years old with gray hair and the hard expression of someone accustomed to intimidation tactics. The younger man remained silent, but positioned himself to block my view of the street. He looked like private security probably hired to ensure I felt threatened and vulnerable. "You have 30 seconds to leave my property before I call the police," I said, reaching for my phone. Marcus's mask of corporate civility finally dropped completely.
"Listen carefully, you vindictive little nobody. You're going to stop spreading lies about offshore accounts and financial irregularities. You're going to tell the IRS agents that you made mistakes in your record keeping due to personal stress and substance abuse problems."
Substance abuse problems. They were creating a fictional narrative to destroy my credibility as a witness. I started recording on my phone, holding it where they could see the screen.
"You're recording this conversation without consent," Jacob Sterling said. "That's illegal in Ohio."
"Ohio is a one-party consent state," I replied. "I can record any conversation I'm participating in. Please continue explaining your offer." Jennifer stepped forward, her voice taking on a false sweetness. "Billy, we understand you're angry about the termination. We're prepared to offer you $100,000 in consulting fees to help resolve this audit situation. Think about what that money could mean for your mother's medical expenses." Bringing my mother into their threats crossed a line that made my anger crystallize into cold determination. They'd researched my personal finances and were using Mom's health problems as leverage for their criminal cover-up. "Agent Mitchell said offshore wire transfers are a federal crime when they're used to hide stolen money," I said clearly into my phone's microphone. "She estimated the penalties could include 10 to 20 years in federal prison." Marcus's face flushed red with rage. "You stupid little nobody! Do you have any idea who you're dealing with? Jennifer and I have connections in federal law enforcement. We can make your life miserable in ways you can't imagine." The threats were escalating, and I noticed my neighbor, Mrs. Watson, looking out her window with concern. Marcus saw her too and realized his public outburst was being observed by witnesses. Jacob Sterling tried to regain control of the situation.
"Mr. Hartwell, perhaps we should continue this conversation in a more private setting." "No, we're finishing this right here,"
Marcus snapped.
"Billy, you have 24 hours to contact Agent Mitchell and correct your testimony. If you don't, we'll file criminal charges against you for theft of intellectual property and sabotage of federal investigations."
The private investigator looked uncomfortable with the aggressive turn the conversation had taken.
"Mr. Hartwell, I need to advise you that making threats against a federal witness could constitute obstruction of justice."
Jennifer shot him an angry look. "We're paying you to document her hostile behavior, not provide legal advice." This was the moment when their desperation made them careless. Jennifer had just admitted they were paying a private investigator to build a case against me rather than conduct legitimate business research. My phone rang, providing a perfect interruption to their intimidation campaign. The caller ID showed Agent Mitchell's number. "Excuse me, I need to take this call," I said, answering on speakerphone. "Ms. Richardson, this is Agent Mitchell. I'm calling to inform you that we've obtained court orders to freeze several offshore accounts connected to Davidson Industries. We've also issued federal warrants for financial records from Cayman Islands banks. I wanted to thank you for the information you provided this morning." Marcus and Jennifer's expressions showed pure panic as they realized a federal agent was discussing their criminal investigation within earshot of multiple witnesses. "Agent Mitchell, I should mention that Mr. Hartwell and Ms. Walsh are currently at my residence with a private investigator demanding that I change my testimony about the financial irregularities." There was a pause on the line. "Ms. Richardson, are you saying representatives of Davidson Industries are at your home attempting to influence your cooperation with a federal investigation?" "That's correct. They've offered me money to lie about offshore wire transfers, and they've threatened criminal charges if I don't comply with their demands." "Do not agree to anything they're asking. Federal law protects witnesses from retaliation and intimidation. I'm dispatching local law enforcement to your location immediately. Please remain on the line until officers arrive." Marcus realized his threats had been recorded by a federal agent and witnessed by neighbors. His corporate bravado collapsed into desperate damage control. "Agent Mitchell, this is Marcus Hartwell, CFO of Davidson Industries. There's been a misunderstanding. We simply came here to offer Ms. Richardson employment assistance during her transition period. Mr. Hartwell attempting to influence witness testimony in a federal investigation is a felony offense. I suggest you leave Ms. Richardson's property immediately and contact your attorney." Red and blue lights appeared at the end of my street as Columbus police cruisers responded to Agent Mitchell's request. Jacob Sterling was already walking quickly toward his car, clearly wanting no part of what was about to unfold. Jennifer grabbed Marcus's arm. "We're leaving right now. This was a mistake." As they hurried toward their cars, Marcus turned back one final time. "You have no idea what you've started, Billy. When this is over, you'll never work in accounting again anywhere in Ohio." Officer Ryan Matthews arrived as Marcus and Jennifer were driving away. He took detailed statements from me and Mrs. Watson, who had observed the entire confrontation from her window. I provided him with my phone recording and Agent Mitchell's contact information. "Ma'am, this looks like textbook witness intimidation," Officer Matthews said as he completed his report. "The federal agents will want copies of everything, and there may be additional charges filed against those individuals." My mother had been watching the entire situation unfold from inside the house. When the police officers left, she sat down beside me on the couch with a determination I hadn't seen since her arthritis diagnosis. "Billy, honey, I've been quiet while you handled this situation, but those people just threatened my daughter in my neighborhood. I may be sick, but I'm not helpless. You do whatever it takes to make sure they face consequences for their actions." Mom's support gave me the emotional strength I needed for what was coming next. Marcus and Jennifer had made their final strategic error by escalating to direct intimidation. Instead of silencing me, they'd provided federal agents with additional evidence of their criminal behavior. My phone buzzed with the text from Agent Mitchell. "Federal warrants have been issued for Marcus Hartwell and Jennifer Walsh. They'll be arrested tomorrow morning. Thank you for your courage in reporting their intimidation attempts." Justice was finally within reach. Friday morning brought the news I'd been hoping for since this entire nightmare began. Agent Mitchell called at 8:15 with an update that made me smile for the first time in weeks. Ms. Richardson, Marcus Hartwell, and Jennifer Walsh were arrested at 6:30 this morning on federal charges of embezzlement, tax evasion, and witness intimidation. The arrest warrants were executed simultaneously at their residences to prevent any coordination of their defense strategies. I sat down at my kitchen table feeling a wave of relief and vindication wash over me. What happens next?
The investigation has expanded beyond Davidson Industries. We've discovered that Mr. Hartwell and Ms. Walsh were involved in similar schemes at their previous employers. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit is now leading a multi-jurisdictional investigation into corporate fraud patterns.
This was bigger than I'd imagined. Marcus and Jennifer weren't just incompetent managers who'd made poor decisions. They were professional criminals who specialized in infiltrating companies and stealing from them systematically.
Agent Mitchell, what about Davidson Industries? Will the company survive this investigation? That depends on several factors, including the company's cooperation with our investigation and their willingness to implement proper oversight procedures. We're not interested in destroying legitimate businesses, but we need assurance that the criminal behavior has been eliminated.
Around 10 o'clock, Harold Davidson called from the company's offices. His voice sounded stronger and more determined than it had since his retirement.
Billy, I'm back in charge temporarily while the board of directors decides how to proceed. The first thing I want to do is publicly apologize for how you were treated and clear your name completely.
Mr. Davidson,
I appreciate that, but what's the situation with the employees who were laid off? That's why I'm calling. I want to offer you the position of Chief Financial Officer with complete authority to rebuild our financial integrity. Your first task would be rehiring everyone who was wrongfully terminated and implementing proper oversight procedures. The offer was unexpected and overwhelming. CFO was a significant promotion from my previous role with substantially higher salary and real authority to prevent future misconduct. But it also meant returning to a company where I'd been humiliated and betrayed. I need some time to consider the offer, Mr. Davidson. This has been an emotional roller coaster, and I want to make sure I'm making the right decision for everyone involved. Of course, take all the time you need. But I want you to know that I've reviewed the financial records with the auditors, and your work over the past 8 years was exemplary. The problems we're facing are entirely due to Marcus and Jennifer's criminal activities. The local news coverage had shifted dramatically after the arrests. Channel 6 ran a full retraction of their previous story, acknowledging that I had been wrongfully portrayed in earlier reports. The new narrative focused on the corporate fraud investigation and praised my cooperation with federal authorities. My phone buzzed with messages from former colleagues expressing support and apologizing for believing the earlier false accusations. Amanda Chen called to say the entire accounting department wanted to personally apologize for not defending me when Marcus launched his smear campaign. Billy, we were scared of losing our jobs, so we stayed quiet when we should have spoken up for you, Amanda said tearfully. It was cowardly, and we all feel terrible about it. The Columbus Dispatch ran a front-page story about the investigation with the headline, "Local Accountant Exposes Corporate Fraud Ring." The article portrayed me as a whistleblower who had courageously assisted federal investigators despite personal and professional attacks. It mentioned that Davidson Industries was cooperating fully with the investigation and had offered me a senior executive position. My mother read the article with obvious pride. "I always knew my daughter was special," she told Mrs. Watson, who had stopped by with homemade cookies and moral support. She stood up for what was right even when it cost her everything. Around 2 o'clock, Agent Torres called with more details about the broader investigation. "Ms. Richardson, we've traced the offshore accounts to a sophisticated money laundering operation involving multiple companies across 3 states. Mr. Hartwell and Ms. Walsh are facing federal racketeering charges that could result in 20-year prison sentences. What about the money they stole? We've recovered approximately $2.7 million from frozen accounts, and we're working with international authorities to locate additional hidden assets. Davidson Industries should recover most of their stolen funds through asset forfeiture proceedings." The scope of the criminal operation was staggering. Marcus and Jennifer had been running a professional fraud scheme that targeted mid-sized companies with weak oversight procedures.
Davidson Industries was just their latest victim, and my termination had accidentally disrupted their plans before they could steal millions more. Frank Rodriguez called that afternoon to share updates from the company.
Miss Billy, it's like a completely different place today. Mr. Harold is back in charge, and he's treating everyone with respect again. People are smiling and talking normally instead of walking around scared all the time. The Ohio Society of CPAs contacted me about their annual Ethics in Accounting Award, suggesting that my actions exemplified the professional integrity they wanted to recognize. They offered to nominate me for the award and provide public recognition of my courage in exposing corporate fraud. My college roommate called from Toledo with news that the story was spreading throughout Ohio's accounting community. Billy, you're becoming famous in the best possible way. Accounting firms are impressed that you chose professional ethics over personal convenience. Your reputation is stronger now than it ever was. Late that afternoon, I made my decision about Harold's offer. I called him at the office and accepted the CFO position with specific conditions. The company would establish an independent ethics oversight board, implement whistleblower protection procedures, and create an employee ownership program that gave workers a stake in the company's success. Those are excellent conditions, Billy. I should have implemented those policies years ago. Your experience has taught me that employee loyalty must be earned through ethical treatment, not demanded through intimidation. My first day as CFO was scheduled for the following Monday. My first official act would be personally calling each of the 23 wrongfully terminated employees and offering them their jobs back with full back pay and formal apologies. Saturday morning brought a knock at my door from a courier delivering legal documents. Marcus and Jennifer's attorneys were attempting to sue me for defamation and emotional distress, claiming my cooperation with federal investigators had damaged their reputations and career prospects. I called Agent Mitchell, who laughed when I read her the lawsuit details. Ms. Richardson, federal law provides absolute protection for witnesses who cooperate with criminal investigations. Their lawsuit will be dismissed immediately, and filing it may constitute additional obstruction of justice charges. The lawsuit was a desperate attempt to intimidate me into silence, but it had the opposite effect. The legal community rallied around me with several prominent attorneys offering pro bono representation to defend against frivolous retaliation lawsuits. Sunday evening, I sat in my living room with my mother reflecting on the incredible week we'd just experienced. Mom's arthritis pain seemed reduced, probably because the stress of uncertain finances had been eliminated by my new position. "Sweetheart, I'm so proud of how you handled this situation," she said, holding my hand. "You could have taken their money and stayed quiet, but you chose to do the right thing even when it was difficult." The reckoning was complete. Marcus and Jennifer were facing decades in federal prison for their crimes. Davidson Industries was recovering under ethical leadership. The 23 wrongfully terminated employees were getting their jobs back, and I had been vindicated both personally and professionally. But most importantly, I'd learned that integrity isn't about avoiding difficult decisions. It's about making the right choices even when they come at personal cost. Sometimes justice requires patience, courage, and the willingness to trust that truth eventually prevails over corruption. 2 years later, I stood in the corner office that had once belonged to Marcus Hartwell, looking out at the parking lot where I'd been escorted out in humiliation. The view was the same, but everything else had changed completely. Davidson Industries had not only survived the federal investigation, but thrived under new ethical leadership. Our annual revenue had increased by 30% as clients appreciated our transparent financial practices and employee-centered culture. The company that had once fired me to save money was now more profitable than ever. My first act as CFO had been rehiring all 23 wrongfully terminated employees with full back pay and formal apologies. Many of them were now thriving in expanded roles with increased responsibilities and better compensation.
Amanda Chen had been promoted to controller, and Frank Rodriguez was head of our new Employee Safety and Ethics Committee. The employee ownership program I'd implemented had transformed company culture completely. Workers now received quarterly profit-sharing distributions and had voting representatives on the board of directors. Employee satisfaction surveys showed unprecedented levels of engagement and loyalty. Marcus Hartwell and Jennifer Walsh had both been sentenced to 15 years in federal prison after pleading guilty to racketeering, embezzlement, and tax evasion charges. The court ordered them to pay full restitution plus penalties, ensuring that Davidson Industries recovered every stolen dollar along with substantial damages. The broader investigation had uncovered a fraud ring involving 12 companies across 6 states. Federal prosecutors estimated that Marcus and Jennifer had stolen over $18 million during their 5-year criminal career. Their professional licenses were permanently revoked, and they were banned from holding corporate leadership positions after their release. Harold Davidson had returned to active leadership as chairman of the board, but his early-stage dementia diagnosis meant he relied heavily on my financial expertise and ethical judgment. He often said that my courage in exposing the fraud had saved the company he'd spent 40 years building.
"Billy, I made a mistake trusting those people without proper oversight," he admitted during one of our weekly meetings.
"Your experience taught me that good intentions aren't enough. You need strong systems to prevent corruption." My personal life had flourished along with my professional success. I'd met Agent Kevin Sullivan from the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit during the investigation, and we'd developed a romantic relationship built on mutual respect for integrity and justice. Kevin specialized in corporate fraud cases and appreciated my insights into white-collar criminal patterns. Mom's health had improved dramatically once her financial stress was eliminated. My CFO salary and benefits package ensured she received the best possible medical care without worrying about costs. We'd moved into a larger house together where she had her own suite with accessible bathrooms and a beautiful garden view. The Ohio Society of CPAs had indeed awarded me their Ethics in Accounting Award, and I'd been invited to speak at conferences across the country about corporate integrity and whistleblower protection. My story had become a case study in business schools about the importance of ethical leadership and employee loyalty. But the most satisfying change was the transformation of Davidson Industries' corporate culture. We'd eliminated the fear and intimidation that had characterized Marcus and Jennifer's leadership. Employees felt safe reporting concerns, and we addressed problems proactively before they became crises. The federal investigation had also led to important regulatory changes. The IRS now required more frequent audits of companies that outsource financial operations, and Congress had strengthened whistleblower protection laws for corporate fraud cases. Amanda knocked on my office door, interrupting my reflection. "Billy, the new hire orientation is starting in Conference Room B. The recruits are excited to meet the CFO who's famous for fighting corporate corruption." I smiled, remembering when I'd been the nervous junior accountant attending orientation 8 years ago.
"I'll be right there, Amanda. Are you ready for your presentation about our employee protection policies?"
"Absolutely. I think the new hires will appreciate learning about a company that actually values integrity over profits." As I walked toward the conference room, I passed the cubicle where I'd worked for my first 3 years at Davidson Industries. A young woman named Sarah Thompson now occupied that space, and she was already showing the same dedication and attention to detail that had characterized my early career. "Ms. Richardson," Sarah said as I passed her desk, "thank you again for the mentorship program. Having an experienced CFO personally guide new accountants is incredible." The mentorship program was one of my favorite innovations. I worked directly with junior staff members to ensure they understood both technical accounting principles and ethical decision-making frameworks. No young employee would ever face the moral dilemmas I'd encountered without proper guidance and support. In the conference room, 12 new employees waited to learn about Davidson Industries' values and expectations. They represented our continued growth and commitment to ethical business practices. Looking at their eager faces, I saw hope for the future of corporate America. Welcome to Davidson Industries. I began addressing the group with genuine enthusiasm. You're joining a company that believes integrity and profitability aren't competing goals, they're complementary strategies that create sustainable success. I told them an abbreviated version of my story, focusing on the lessons learned rather than the personal drama. The key message was simple. Doing the right thing might be difficult in the short term, but it always leads to better outcomes for everyone involved. Your job isn't just to process numbers accurately, I concluded. Your job is to protect the financial integrity that allows this company to provide good jobs for hundreds of families. That's a responsibility we take seriously, and we'll support you in meeting it. After the orientation, I returned to my office and found a letter waiting on my desk. The return address was from the Federal Bureau of Prisons in Ohio. My heart raced as I opened the envelope, wondering what Marcus could possibly want to communicate after 2 years in prison. The letter was brief and handwritten. Billy, I know I have no right to contact you, but I wanted you to know that prison has given me time to think about my actions. You were right to expose what Jennifer and I were doing. We were stealing from good people who trusted us. I'm sorry for the pain we caused you and everyone else at Davidson Industries. I hope the company continues to prosper under your leadership. Marcus. I read the letter twice, surprised by its apparent sincerity. Whether Marcus had genuinely learned from his mistakes or was simply trying to improve his chances for early parole, I'd never know. But it provided a sense of closure to the most difficult chapter of my professional life. My phone rang, displaying Kevin's number.
How was your day, my favorite CFO?
He asked, with the warmth that made me smile every time we talked. Educational as always. I just received an apology letter from Marcus Hartwell. Prison seems to have given him some perspective on his choices. That's more accountability than most white-collar criminals ever demonstrate. You should feel proud that your courage led to justice for their victims. Kevin understood the importance of what I'd accomplished because he'd seen too many cases where corporate fraud went unpunished because witnesses were too scared or compromised to speak up. My willingness to risk personal consequences for the sake of justice had made a real difference in multiple lives. That evening, I sat in my living room with my mother reviewing the quarterly financial reports that showed Davidson Industries' continued success. The numbers told a story of ethical leadership, employee loyalty, and sustainable growth that would have been impossible under Marcus and Jennifer's corrupt management. Sweetheart, do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd warned them about the audit when they fired you? Mom asked as we shared our nightly tea. It was a question I'd considered many times over the past 2 years. I think about it sometimes, Mom. If I'd warned them, they probably would have destroyed evidence and covered their tracks. The theft would have continued, more employees would have been hurt, and justice might never have been served. So, your silence that day actually protected innocent people. I believe it did. Sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is allow people to face the natural consequences of their choices. Marcus and Jennifer needed to be stopped, and my warning would have just helped them escape accountability. The life lesson was profound and personal. I'd learned that loyalty must be earned through ethical treatment, not demanded through intimidation or manipulation. Real integrity meant making difficult decisions based on principles rather than convenience or personal benefit. Standing up for myself hadn't required vindictiveness or revenge. It had required patience, courage, and faith that truth eventually prevails over corruption. The justice I'd experienced wasn't about destroying my enemies. It was about protecting innocent people and creating systems that prevented future harm. Davidson Industries was now a company that Harold Davidson could be proud of, a place where employees were valued, ethics were prioritized, and success was measured by more than just quarterly profits. The culture I'd helped create would outlast any individual leader and continue protecting workers for generations. As I prepared for bed, I reflected on the journey that had brought me from a humiliated, terminated employee to a respected corporate leader. The betrayal and injustice I'd experienced had been painful, but they'd also revealed strengths I didn't know I possessed. Most importantly, I'd learned that you don't have to choose between doing the right thing and achieving personal success. Ethical behavior might require short-term sacrifices, but it creates long-term opportunities that would never exist through corruption or compromise. The next morning would bring new challenges and responsibilities, but I faced them with confidence earned through adversity and wisdom gained through principled decision-making. My story had become proof that integrity isn't just about avoiding wrong choices. It's about having the courage to make right ones even when the cost seems too high. The story of Davidson Industries and my role in exposing corporate fraud became a testament to the power of individual integrity in creating positive change. Sometimes justice doesn't require grand gestures or dramatic confrontations. Sometimes it just requires ordinary people having the courage to do the right thing when it matters most. Have you ever faced a situation where standing up for your principles came at a personal cost? Your experiences and insights could inspire others who are facing similar ethical dilemmas in their own lives. Please share your thoughts in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more real-life stories of courage and integrity, and share it with others who might benefit from hearing about the power of doing the right thing. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember, your integrity is worth more than any job that requires you to compromise it. Until next time, stay strong and stay true to your values.